This is WFYI News Now. It's March 10th, and I'm Abriana Herron. On today's show, unanswered questions around a political operative's role in the November election. We'll catch up on what happened last week at the Statehouse. A new resource to help survivors of domestic violence and abuse. And we have an interview with the new leader at the Indianapolis Housing Agency, who's taking charge after years of dysfunction and mismanagement.
I understand your frustration, and I want you to know we are committed to doing what needs to be done to get it right.
Those stories coming up, but first. Many aging Hoosiers in the LGBTQ community struggle to find safe resources to help with food, housing, and health care. A local effort aims to help by forming a list of reliable service providers in central Indiana. LGBTQ people aged 55 and older will help build the list by filling out a survey. The project is being led by the Elder Pride Indie Collective and the Damien Center. Responses will be gathered until March 19th. It's been months since the November election for the Indianapolis Public Schools Board, and questions about a political operative's role in a candidate's filings are still unanswered. From WFYI's Education Desk, Sydney Dauphiné has more.
Terencio Davis was ineligible to run for the District 2 seat on the IPS Board because he lives in another school district. But his candidacy paperwork listed an address inside the IPS district he was running to represent. That paperwork was completed by Peter Luster, an official at Rise Indy, an organization involved with education policy in the city and IPS board elections. Rise Indy says Luster was acting in a personal capacity. But Laura Wilson, associate professor of political science at the University of Indianapolis, says the situation raises unanswered questions.
That's not typical at all, and it's a pretty big deal.
Davis's candidacy for IPS board was challenged, and he was removed from the November ballot. Davis and Luster did not respond to or agree to answer WFYI's questions about the filing. I'm Sydney Dauphiné.
A House committee kicks off second-half debate on property tax reform. Legislation aims to help improve energy transmission. And a bill to create an online portal for Hoosier farmers nears the governor's desk. Indiana Public Broadcasting's Brandon Smith reports on what happened last week at the Statehouse.
Debate on major property tax reform legislation started the second half of session much like it ended the first. Governor Mike Braun says broad relief for homeowners should be the top priority, while local government and school leaders say significant cuts will blow huge holes in their budgets. There's so much proposed wind and solar energy that there's not enough power lines to get it where it needs to go, and building out new transmission is expensive. A House committee-approved bill requires utilities to consider advanced transmission technologies in their long-term plans, tech that can be added to things like power lines to make them more efficient and reduce congestion. And a Senate committee unanimously approved a bill that tasks the Indiana Department of Agriculture with building an online portal for Hoosier farmers. Farmers would be able to search for necessary government information and learn about state and federal funding opportunities. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Brandon Smith at the Statehouse.
Survivors of domestic violence and abuse have another resource to help establish a sense of stability. Thrifty Threads is a secondhand store that focuses on clothing and houseware. It's owned and operated by the Julian Center, a local organization that helps survivors. The original Thrifty Threads opened nearly 20 years ago on the Northwest Side. A second location opened in Castleton on Friday. Survivors who get support from the Julian Center can get essentials free of charge. Members of the public can shop there too. All proceeds go to the Julian Center. The new store is open Monday through Saturday from 10 to 6. And for our final story today, the troubled agency in charge of helping low-income residents with housing in Indianapolis has a new leader. Yvonda Bean was named CEO for the Indianapolis Housing Agency after a federal takeover last year. I recently sat down with Bean to talk about her top priorities as the agency continues to struggle with numerous housing issues. What is the number one thing that you want to address as the new leader of IHA?
The number one thing is certainly to rebuild public trust, and that's going to take a number of different things for that to happen. One thing that we're working on right now is deploying new computer systems. We had old antiquated systems previously, and now we have new laptop devices that are being deployed as we speak this week and also next week. So we're really excited about that. It's really hard to do a job when you don't have the necessary tools to be able to do it. So that's a major accomplishment, and that's through the partnership with HUD and the city. So that's definitely a number one priority. Other priorities, making sure certain our residents know that we're here to help and that we're committed to providing quality, affordable housing for them. I always say we are housers first, and so that means making certain that people have a place that they can, in fact, call home. And so we're doing that, and we're going to continue doing that. Certainly we have some challenges, and, the road is bumpy ahead, but we're all committed to doing the work to get us where we need to be.
How do you think your background will help you, move the organization forward?
So I've been in the industry for 25 years this year, and I've had the pleasure of working with housing authorities across the country, but particularly agencies that have been troubled or in HUD receivership, as is IHA at present. And I have a demonstrated track record of turning those organizations around. So I know that I have what it takes to be able to work with the community, work with the team here, to be able to make IHA an organization that we can all be proud of.
How are you guys planning to move forward with vacancies in general?
Our number one priority is to house families. Again, that is what we do. Yes, there are reports that we have a high vacancy rate, but I do want to point out that some of the communities that we're actually managing now, we haven't always managed. We had a private management company that was managing those properties, and so we know that there are some vacancies that exist at those properties versus our public housing communities. Our occupancy is high for our public housing communities, those we manage directly. The ones we didn't manage, we know that there are some vacancies, and we're in the process now of getting out, knocking on doors, making certain that we identify all of the vacancies. So I can't give you a specific number because we weren't managing those properties previously, but now that we are certainly on top of it.
Then my final question for you today. What is something that you would like to tell current voucher holders who have been struggling with IHA in the past? What is something that you would like for them to know?
So what I would say to those current voucher holders who have been struggling, as you just described it in the past, I understand your frustration. That's what I would say. I understand your frustration, and I want you to know we are committed to doing what needs to be done to get it right. I ask that you please be patient with us. Deploying new computer systems is one immediate response and a demonstration of our commitment to making certain that we have what we need so that we can address your concerns timely. But it's a process. So I want you to know, we know you're frustrated. We want you to know that you want an answer immediately, and we want to give you an answer immediately. But it's just going to take a little bit of time, and we just ask that you please just continue to be patient with us.
All right. Thank you so much, Yvonda.
Okay, you're welcome.
And that's all for today's episode of WFYI News Now. Our podcast is produced by Drew Daudelin and Zach Bundy, with support from the news team at WFYI and public media journalists across the state. Our news director is Sarah Neal-Estes. Kendall Antron produced our music, and I'm your host, Abriana Herron. If you like today's episode, remember to subscribe and share, and follow WFYI on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube to check in on our newsroom throughout the day. Thanks for listening. We'll be back tomorrow.